And we are live. Cool. How we doing?
I am well, doing pretty good.
Very
Always
nice, very
happy on a
nice.
Friday after a long run or long-ish, but yeah, motivates me for the rest of the day. So
Yeah, it's nice recording these things on a Friday. Gives like a good like closure of the week and like a good little ender to look forward to here.
yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I know we have a couple different time zones, so like I'm kind of starting my day, getting through this, and then I'll get through my rest of my routine for the day. But yeah, definitely, it's nice. It's always good to catch up on stuff, and just chat through it. So absolutely.
Well, we were talking about obviously this season of like having just general like themes to episodes. I think this one would be like use cases of AI. Because one of this I came across a story about how Klarna, the buy now pay later company. I think you've heard of them before.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, I think we talked about it a couple of times as far as like everybody's. Well, at least they had some crazy metrics. I think it was last year, maybe even during COVID or building up afterwards, about how the adoption of it was insane, and they're making a crap ton of money, and a lot of people are using that feature of buy now, pay later, or splitting up payments, or whatever it is.
Ah, dude, I totally forgot we did have that because it was like, is this actually like a net positive on society of
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
you buy a TV and get on a payment plan? Is that like great for American consumers here or not? I do remember
Right.
we
It was.
chatted about that. I forgot that.
Yeah.
Well, Klarna, I don't know if they're the largest buy now pay later company, but they're definitely one of the larger ones. I believe they are a Sweden-based firm. So they're based out of Sweden, and essentially, if you have never heard of them before, buy now, pay later. So essentially, if you're going to check out at certain e-commerce stores or retailers, I'm sure a lot of people have seen it now. There's options instead of you just, paying for a TV, you could then get kind of like on a payment plan. So you don't have to put down as much. You get the TV, you're on a payment plan. And there's like a couple different options or a couple different companies in this like buy now, pay later space. They had an interesting article that the Neuron, that newsletter that I follow, um, AI newsletter follow, great read if you don't subscribe. They highlighted that Klarna um, and I'm looking at the headline now. Klarna cuts agency expenses by 25% using AI. And I think one of the things we were talking about before was like getting a lot of questions from people just in general, like how are you using AI? So I thought this would be an interesting one just to speak through some of the use cases um, that they've implemented, and then maybe we could chat through some like Salesforce stuff and like how we're actually using AI in our day to day in kind of like this general marketing space.
Yeah, I think that's great. I
Oh,
got plenty of ways of showing you of AI that I use.
all right. Let me tee this up. I'll call out a couple things that I found interesting, and I will put this. There was an Ad Age article on this topic. I will link this in the show notes once we get this episode posted. So let me just take you through a couple things here. So essentially, what the main headline is like they've cut agency expenses by 25%, not marketing budget or anything like that. Agency expenses by 25%. I'm going to go out on a limb now and say this trend's going to continue. I think that's a pretty obvious one. I think there's a lot of larger agencies of the world that are extremely expensive that a lot of these businesses are going to look to implement some type of AI efficiencies to then reduce cost. I don't think that's necessarily going to have an impact on marketing dollars, but agency dollars for sure. So let me call out a couple things here and then just get your thoughts here, Steve. So Florida, they cut costs by 25%, which they're saying is about 10 million annually from their strategy. So they have a hefty agency support to say the least. So that equates to like what 40, $50 million they're spending on agency fees alone per year. It's a lot of money, obviously. So their chief marketing officer, David Sandstrom, he had a couple like kind of call outs in here. And essentially what he's saying is that it's helping them become leaner, faster, and more responsive, which is going to lead to a better product. So what have they actually done? Couple things. So it sounds like they're using AI instead of the agencies for translation, production, CRM, and social work. Were like kind of the main four that they called out. And they stated that they're now using AI for creating images rather than bespoke imagery. And they said in the first 3 months of this year, the brand generated over 1,000 images. So right there, image generation. I mean, you've been in agencies forever. Sometimes getting
Yeah.
creative takes forever. You know what I mean? And get like 3 or 4 images cranked out can be like a week to 2 week process. So it seems like they're
Yeah,
using AI just to crank
and every
imagery
ad
out.
platform's giving some sort of support mechanisms eventually to like auto create video or play ads, etc. So they're building it in. So okay, what else was there? Translate
So
images.
images, without question, I think that's going to have a huge impact, and agencies are going to have to like adopt some of these, and that's probably going to impact your pricing model. Because if you can crank out way more images or video assets significantly quicker, that might have an impact on your production costs. The other thing, and I don't know, Steve, have you ever used Copy Assistant in ChatGPT?
Copy assisted.
Copy Assistant.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah, I don't know if I've used it in ChatGPT as like one of their plugins. I forget which one I used, but I thought it was Copy Assistant. But they said that Klarna is using its new AI-powered tool, AI Copy Assistant, and it's deployed for 80% of its copywriting. Earlier this month, Klarna announced that 90% of its staffers use this daily. So it sounds like they're using this Copy Assistant to crank out whether it's ad copy or just general content that it was a huge
They're using
agency
some
fee
sort
as
of
well.
AI. Yeah, yeah. Okay, that makes sense from a production standpoint.
And then it sounds like they're just doing some other like some CRM stuff and maybe like some social stuff. I don't know. After reading through this, the main kind of takeaways was they're not forcing, but like it sounds like majority of their company is adopting using AI in their day-to-day practices, and it's mainly for copy as well as image creation. I think it was a big headline. It's AI related, it's cutting expenses by 25% or saving 10 mil a year. I don't know. Not that it's fluffy, but I think it's not like the most earth shattering, use of AI ever. Their agency, they were
Yeah,
paying them a bunch to build out creative and copy and stuff. They're now using some AI tools to do that. Makes total sense.
they might be using. Okay, here's my cynical way of looking at things: is that I don't know. I think they might be using AI as a scapegoat of being able to cut 25% of fat they already had and
One
clean
hundred
it out.
percent.
Hey, let's just blame it on AI. Everybody's your job's getting taken over. But it's like, hey, we were already pretty fat anyways with our inefficiencies. So hey, if we can cut that 25%, and hey, our stakeholders or whatever executives get more money. I mean, dude, that's probably part of it. Maybe not all the 25%, but I mean, to address the topic of like, okay, besides cynical Steve of they're just trying to make more money. I get translation. Now I would tell clients like, hey, you want to do a Spanish campaign? Like I've talked to you, Trevor. I'm like, sure. Like
Yeah.
we could throw it in there. No big deal. The translations are fantastic. I mean, sure, we probably want to get them scanned by someone native tongue to get to it, but it's like before, like, yeah, no, we don't do that. But it's like for sure, we could definitely do that. I think maybe if you get into more of the more complicated languages outside of like English and like the romantic languages, like you get into like Mandarin or something like that. I don't know. That might be a little bit more of a challenge, but I get translations. If you're translating copy back and forth, I mean, eventually, ChatGPT's like I can't wait for it to come out. Hopefully, I get it before I go on vacation here. But it's literally I'll be able to just have a conversation in two different languages, and it'll auto like translate for us real time. So I get that 100%. Images, I get as long as they don't look too like they got to be on brand. I mean, I bet you could probably train an AI model to make really good brand images. You train it enough. Okay, I get. Makes sense. And the whole copy assistant social, like, yeah, that's just text, right? Of just like trying to create words. So, I mean, I get it. It makes sense. And I think a lot of people are looking to use AI in those ways to start because they're just they're the gateway. I don't think anybody's getting crazy advanced yet on using AI in I don't know, maybe the agency world beyond like text translations or images, workflows, etc., or some sort of like automated workflow and building out ads. It's just we haven't got there yet. But But yeah, we could talk about some of those specific things we are doing. But yeah, that was kind of my broad, kind of cynical take on it.
I had the same exact take. I like after reading through the article, it just screamed this was literally produced for like an older board of executives who don't use
Yeah.
AI but know it's a big buzzword and know like it has to happen. This literally screamed like let's write this for our board, or our
Yeah.
shareholders. I don't know if they're a publicly traded company or not, but like I don't know. I agree.
Well,
I
a
feel
lot
like
of
it's one of
dude, I have seen. I'm sorry not to interrupt, but I've been part of instances where like people will say like, "Hey, AI's here and it can make things more efficient. So go find those efficiencies and save us money. Go do it."
yep.
That's what a lot of people are saying as a scapegoat for this, and it's like, well, hold on, you're just trying to make more money. Because you could argue, should they be paying agencies less because we're using AI, right? Because we become more efficient. Like, should be people paying us less because we're using AI? I mean, it's a question. I don't think it's
I,
valid because there's a lot of other things we're doing better work. But it's like, oh well, hey, you're using AI. You should be cheaper. Your rates should be cheaper, Trevor, because it's helping you write ad copy. Is that true?
I,
I don't agree with
I,
it.
I don't agree. I struggle with that, and I don't agree with that either because I've always thought in my mind as well as like in agency space, and especially like larger agencies, it's just known for like hiring young people and training them, and like they're grinding because you're younger in your career and you're trying to make a name. So a lot of these people who are like hands-on keyboard production are like newer people with experienced people guiding them. And like you definitely get to a point where you're like, well, that report that I used to do used to take me like 7 hours because I used to get feedback. It took forever. And now I can just crank it out in an hour. But you didn't then give a discount to the client because it's like, well, that person, you're paying for their expertise and their experience. So if AI is going to improve the output and improve whatever the deliverable might be, I think the time that it took you to produce it is kind of irrelevant in my opinion. It's more about like what value did you then produce on that end, not necessarily the time that it took you to do it.
Yeah, I would agree because I mean, also time is a thing, right? If it saves you more time, you have more time to do what? Work more on their account potentially. That's one way you could look at it, of looking at different angles of things, of data that you might not have done
Exactly.
before. That's potentially how I would fall on it. Um, Others says, well, hey, maybe you just have more time to work on more clients, right? So you're taking more clients, so you're making more money on it because you're doing that because you have more time. It takes you less time, so you can take more clients. Not necessarily, because I think there's still a lot of that expertise that has to happen on it, just because it's production work. There's still a lot of expertise that has to happen, calls, explaining, etc. Because I think even like a good example of like saving time, right? You said reporting. One thing I have that I use with my monthly reporting, and it helps me kind of get my mindset together. One things that I've done, I created a simple chat or a simple GPT, and a GPT that's in Chat GPT. It's like a module that you're going to use over and over again, so you can kind of give it prompts. You don't necessarily have to use a custom GPT. You just have to do the same prompt over again. So you can literally like save prompts on a Word document that you can use over and over again
Yeah.
to get the prompt going. And every thread, a GPT just helps kind of shortcut it because it's like pre-prompted. So I have a pre-prompted GPT that basically explains that I'm going to give them a voice dictation that turns into text of what I'm looking at a report. So literally I will have the monthly report up on one screen, maybe a couple screens because I'm looking at a couple different things, and I will use my keyboard or use the built-in Mac software, which is getting really good, especially if you upgraded the latest one. The dictation is super clean, just like on your iPhones and you're doing dictation. I'm not sure if you do that. I do a lot more now. It's just as good on your laptop here. So I will dictate and I will literally say, okay, in the month of May, we're going to be comparing it to April. Here's the data that I'm looking for, or here's what I'm seeing. Okay, visits were up this, and I literally just kind of auditory, like almost like doing a quick client call of what I'm seeing, as like I was talking to a client. I get this long dictation, and it could be from a couple different sources. My custom dashboard, maybe it's Google Search Console. I'm looking at Google Ads. I have some certain call outs. And so then I give that dictation to my Chat GPT. I call it my C42 report dictation tool. And it spits out a format that I can copy and paste and give to a client in my executive summary. So it's a way that I skipped of like looking at it and typing it and doing it. It's like, no, I'm using a faster bandwidth of like audio versus
That's
typing
sick.
to translate it through. And it's not 100% perfect, but it's like, hey, it's like 80% there. And it's way better of a report than me like sitting there, like looking at it, copying the numbers, this and that. It's just like I can get a lot more granular in it in the way that it produces a clean looking report. That is one way that it has made it a lot better for the clients and myself and time. So, I mean, that's one way is like using it for reporting. And the dictation is something I love to do with AI, using dictation. I hate typing these days.
I've honestly tested that a couple times before with other things, but like to be honest, I've never done that for reporting. I've never, but I think that's a really smart call because I think everybody can relate to reporting. You're usually kind of like off the start, just like looking at a bunch of like dashboards, GA4, whatever, and like, okay, I see that, I see that. And like, you're trying to formulate a narrative of like how performance was or whatever. And that's a really good way to kind of like synthesize everything together
Yeah, I can see
in a
if I've got
dictation.
this, if this GPT is public, I can always make it public too. Yeah, and then I can give it to you or give it to anybody, and they can
That's
use
a
it.
really
That's
sick
kind of
use
cool
case
part.
there.
So I mean,
I'm gonna try and use
it,
that a little bit
and you can
more.
be super sloppy with your dictation. Like it's like you look at the text that comes out, and it's like, I mean, some things if they get something grossly wrong from a number perspective, or like I say the word
Yeah,
SEO, and it might say SEO, and you're like, okay, correct that because it's not going to train.
yeah.
But most of the time, it kind of understands that garbage that you're putting in there and structures it out, and you can verify it coming through. But it's just a great way of like, because you're gonna, it's almost like it would be like the inverse, right? You get on a call with a client and you go through a report. And I'd love to do that with clients sometimes. It's like, dude, I'm not even gonna look at the report until I look at it with you. Let's go through this real time. So I'm not gonna have the gotcha moments. Like we're gonna have those moments together, good or bad. It's like
Yep.
going through that process. And if it was being recorded, and then someone, like I guess you would might have used like a junior rep from back in the day of your big agency, they would be taking the notes on the call, and they would basically be taking the notes down of what we're seeing here and giving the executive summary at the end of the call. It's a way to kind of just speed up that process and change that format.
I think that's sick. I'm gonna try that more often. With when it comes to reporting, at least off the start there. And I don't want this comment to come off as, me sounding like an AI hater here, but in that example, like you still need to know what to look for. You still need to know what your clients' KPIs and objectives are. And like, there's also like a little human element to this. Like, you could give a GPT, here's best practices for reporting, but then there's nuances to each and client that you work with where there's specific call outs or the way in which you. So it's not like you couldn't program your GPT to do that, but I do think there's still an element of like you need to know where to look data wise. You need to be able to understand if that GPT made a recommendation. Does that actually make sense? Does that actually tie back to my goals? All of those things. And then lastly, there's still an element of like clients like to have that report reviewed with you on the call to ask questions, to get validation. It's not like there's hey, this AI tool is just going to give something to the client and like that human isn't needed there anymore. Like there's still a lot of aspects to that where I think people's perception of AI is like, it can just do everything. These agents just do everything and automates everything and like no need for humans anymore. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a little too much hype in that space that like it's the end all be all.
Yeah, I think it comes down to like we're providing a service. I've said this before, and like that service is still that human touch part of it. There's a huge element of that in what we do. And to your point, until AI and society in general are okay with AI being a customer service or service type of tool that people like and respond to, then that will change the conversation. But it'd be
Yep.
super odd for anything else for like regardless of what we do, but like I don't know, another like service based business that you're interfacing with AI up front. I think anybody would be weirded out by it. Like it's just not
No
there
doubt.
yet. I think it will get there eventually. Of But yeah, so um,
It. I definitely think for simple things in customer service, I forget there was a I forget what company announced it, but they implemented customer service with like some like bots who could respond, whether it's chat or some voice. I think they could take phone calls as well. And it like significantly improved response time and customers were happy and it really helped that. And I can see in instances where like you're calling for some type of customer support, but like say for example you're working with a CPA and somebody's going to do your taxes and like an AI bot could just take all of your documents, do everything and submit it on your like I don't know. I know me personally, I would still want to speak to a human to be like, "Hey, can we do this to maybe like save some money here? Could we do what are your thoughts on this strategy? What are your
yeah, that
I don't know. I
interface
would
yet is not there yet.
it's
Like
just
that
not there yet.
conversation, because you say like chat bot, right? We always think of this as a machine, a bot, etc. Like,
Yeah.
and it like not having a personality or not having an intelligence, and we know that it's just like a system that's happening until that's camouflaged, until it feels real, almost like a VR headset going in. Then we can have the discussion of like, okay, we're okay with it. We don't need the human part of it because it feels human
Yeah.
in that way. So
I will
we'll
say
see where that
though,
gets there.
after reading this article and having some experiences as of late, it does seem like if you're in an SEO agency, paid agency, whatever you want to kind of call it there, I do think pricing is going to be something that's come into question a whole lot more. I've heard a lot of clients as of late asking about like performance-based pricing models and maybe having some more skin in the game with some of these retainers. I think this was a good example with Klarna. Like they cut 25%, which equated to 10 million. So they're spending 40 to 50 million dollars on agency fees a year. That is massive. Like 40 million dollars is a lot of money. And if you're working with an agency that charges you, hey, for these 10 images, it's going to cost you $20,000 for us to produce it. I think those days are going to be gone pretty soon here. Like quick turnarounds with content and creative, unless I don't know. I think that the model of like, hey, this is we're charging you 150 bucks and it's going to take us 20 hours. That type of retainer scoping, I think, is going to be come into question, and clients or who are working with agencies are going to like ask more questions about that moving forward. Now, I do think what we talked about at the start of like, does it produce more value so you can justify those costs? I think there's probably a component to that, but I think if you're like a larger scale agency working with a Klarna and they just like tripled the output of images that they can create, you as an agency needs to adopt to that in some capacity. Because if you're relying on creative hours and content hours, I don't know, that might be a tough one moving forward.
Yeah, and those bigger agencies have just crazy fees that go through, but people pay them because they feel like they need that. That's kind of like, hey, I need my
That
agency of
brand,
record, etc., the brand, etc.
yeah,
So they might be okay but it's still, it's like they're almost buying that human element. So I don't know.
it's
Let's get
interesting.
into some more specifics, like examples of how you use AI. I'd be curious. Let's go back and forth. Maybe the next we got a little bit here, but like, give me an example. I'll give you an example. Let's go back and forth on what you use or how you use
I
AI.
do pretty much every day or almost every single day keyword research. So I do like a lot of, I manage a lot of search campaigns like Google PPC search campaigns. That is my absolute starting ground, which it wasn't before ChatGPT was a thing and AI was like, prevalent here. So whenever I have to do a keyword expansion or building new campaigns or even analyzing current search campaigns that are in market, I'm pretty much solely using ChatGPT 4, I guess 4.0 now is what it's called,
Mm-hmm.
as my starting point. So, say for example, I have a brand new client. I will provide ChatGPT, hey, we're doing Google Ads. I need search keywords. Here's the client's website. Here's the goals. Here's some general keyword themes that I'm thinking of right off the bat. Give me as many long tail and broad keyword variations that you think would be relevant in a Google PPC search campaign that you would bid on if you were in this manager position. Bang, it'll spit out a list of keywords for me. And I might go back and have a couple different questions of like, hey, did you consider this angle? Did you consider this theme? And once I feel like I have an extensive list of keywords that it's provided me, I'll then take that and I'll do some research on my own of the website and I'll scrape some more. or I'll use an SEM Rush, or I'll use a Google Keyword Planner. Things I historically did, but the absolute starting point, I'm typically using ChatGPT.
Okay, then that makes a lot of sense to do so. I could see that. Talking about kind of keyword research on the SEO side of things, I've done a little. There's a little bit of a chicken egg scenario with SEO where it's like, are we going to figure out what keywords we want to go for, but the site's not relevant for yet? That's kind of your kind of keyword research where you're kind of doing exploratory new stuff. But for like what the site has currently, that's something SEO has to do. It's more of a cut and black and white scenario there, where I've built a tool using some I think it's a program called Sheet AI. Basically, integrates ChatGPT into Google Sheets, and I have this kind of chain prompt that goes through where I got to input some data in. So like I'll scrape rankings for individual URLs. I'll scrape the content for individual URLs. Those are primarily the primary input that I'll give this tool, that I'll ask it per URL. Like basically I'll ask it to go per URL, go take the content, consider the content that I gave you, consider the rankings, the top rankings for this keyword, and provide me, up to 5 to 10 relevant keywords, search phrases that this would be relevant for. And then that can get compiled into a kind of a keyword list. Based on those keywords that are produced, I could then have it create, a title tag, a meta description, H1 tags. It could do a small snippet of content. And I can mass scale this across a lot. Does it fire off completely? Great. No, it doesn't. So there still has to be a huge manual part that goes into where, like, take that, put it into a static sheet, kind of scrolling through it, maybe rerun some specific queries. But it provides a way better experience as far as title tag, meta creation, keywords. It's a little bit tough because I am in a little bit of a boat where a scenario where telling Google what keywords you want to rank for in SEO, it's kind of been harder to do. You kind of have to give them what you think they should rank for, and then you nurture what Google is giving you back, rather than like forcing a keyword. You can do both, but they can be challenges. So that's one way. Based on keyword research, I use GPT and AI to do that. What else you got?
I think that's a good example there of like, it really helps, but you still need to have some experience and
100%.
expertise to push it along. I think another thing that's been really helpful is in like keep it on Google Ads, and this could really apply to any ad platform. The name of the game is like over time whittling down to your target audience. So over time, you're going to make optimizations, whether that's negating certain audiences or shutting off ads at particular times of the day, or whatever the case may be. So in that, you're looking at a lot of different data sets, and I've been using it for breaking down like Excel files. For example, like a good example that comes to mind, I just did this the other day, is we're working with a client where we're running Google search campaigns. They have call tracking platform CallRail, and then they have Salesforce as like their main CRM where all their leads live. So we had all of that data on hand from Google Ads to Salesforce to CallRail. I then got CSV exports from all of those platforms based off of day of week and time of day, and had ChatGPT. I forget there's one actual GPT in there that you could use. I forget the name of it, but essentially it was like, hey, what are the worst times of the day where there's the least overall lead volume activity? So we're giving it Google Ads conversion data, CallRail data, and Salesforce data. And then conversely, like, what are the best times of the day? What are the best days of the week? And if you've ever done this before, like if you download a day of week and an hour of day report in Google Ads, you could be looking at like 10,000 lines of data. You know what I mean? So instead of you creating pivot tables in this Google Ad set and then pivot table in this CallRail and then Salesforce, you could just prompt your way through that. And then you could be like, hey, give me like a really clean table of all of these combined of like best days of the week that we should be bidding on. And then give me the worst days of the week and hours of the day. Instead of me sifting through all that, cleaning the data, doing all the pivot table work that I used to have to do, it's really saved a bunch of time there. I will say, probably go back and just validate some of that. Maybe have like a couple touch points to be like, this actually checks out. But that's been really helpful for like large breaking down of large data sets, just to save some time.
Yeah, I've done that where like I'm looking at a data set and I'm like maybe theorizing like, hey, towards the end of the month, I feel like we don't perform as well from an e-commerce perspective. But in the beginning of the month, like, is that so? If I can provide it data for month over month and they can break it down, you literally just give them the sheets and telling them the scenario, it'll pull up like it can help confirm or deny your hypothesis on like some of the big data sets. So I think some of those more like feelings that you get in a marketing campaign that you kind of have the numbers, but you're not 100% sure. You can always validate it or at least try to validate it by giving GPT that data to break it down because it does a really good job if you give it clean data. So I totally agree.
Yep.
Data analysis is something where
Yep.
like, man, you're like, I'm not sure how to really get this. Anything's possible with GPT to give it a shot and try and see what happens. Questions asked, like, yeah. So I've done a lot of those, and even told clients like, hey, I ran this through AI, and this is what it's saying. So we were thinking. So I'll let you decide if you want to validate those results or not. But this is what it's showing from a trend perspective, and it can draw graphs for you if you if you ask it to show you trend lines, etc. So it'll actually do some of the statistical analysis for you. I think if I do any of I don't know, more A/B testing would be something to throw that way too. Okay, so a couple other items that just kind of quick hits on things that I use. Is I got a couple other GPTs that I have, just things that I use all the time. Um, one I don't. This one's called, I call it my note enhancer. So I don't all the time have to take notes for client calls. Typically, we'll have project management layer in there, but sometimes I'm playing that project manager role or I'm stepping in, and I'm horrible about writing notes. Um, typing it or even writing it is just hard because I'm really trying to be engaged with the client. So when I have to kind of wear that more project management hat, what I'll do is I'll take all my notes and they're not crazy detailed. They're somewhat structured, and then I can give it to this GPT because it knows I'm going to give you. I'm a digital marketing company. I work for this. I'm going to give you a bullet point summary. Can you please flush this out a little bit more? Provide takeaway links if there should be maybe a takeaway you feel like. Same thing like the reporting. It spits back something that's 80% better or 80% I can use, and then I just got to flush
That's
out. So,
it.
like, quick calls like that, I can just move that over. Okay, I know it's going to be polished. It's going to look better to the client. It's not just like chicken scratch notes of like bad bullet points. It gets the concepts of what you're trying to do. So, that's one other way I do it. And then the other one that I use all the freaking time, probably my most used chat GPT is a GPT that I call like my message optimizer pro. I come up with these stupid names. This one's public too. But basically I can give it a message, be it a Basecamp message, a Sauna message, an email message. And I've got it prompted to where like, hey, please match the same tone because I don't want to lose my tone in an email. But I struggle. Like I'm dyslexic. Dude, before there was things like Grammarly, do the shit that I had to go through in creating an email or message. Like I would literally, not to go too down the tangent, but I would literally do text to read, so I had to listen to the words that was writing, so my brain could pick it up differently than visually, and it would take
Oh
forever
wow.
to write. And so I developed tricks in that way to do it. And so yeah, Grammarly was always fun. I still have that layered in, but what I can do is I can take this message, and maybe sometimes I'm not sure how to even like I know what I want to say, but I'm not sure how to put it in an email. Like I'm not one of those like beautiful email writers traditionally. I can make one, but it's going to take me a fucking hour to do. And I want to do
Yeah.
client work or other shit than like this fucking email. I'm like, God damn it. So I could
Yeah.
literally, sometimes I'll do the dictation sometimes, but I'll just write out a kind of a hashed out email and maybe even some of the points. I give it to ChatGPT in this GPT, and it creates a message that most of the time matches my same tone and personality, but just weaves in a beautiful email that I can use 80% of, copy
Love
and
it.
paste it in. And it's better than any of the native like Gemini stuff in Gmail or even any of the native tools. Like I feel like moving into a separate spot, a different prompt, it comes back better. And so that's something I use all the freaking time to help improve that communication skill. That's tough because like email, like I'm better talking to people, it's higher bandwidth, my brain does better with it. But like, dude, typing, fucking hate it. So now I come out actually as somewhat articulate with a point on an email or basically a
I've done
message.
that. That's so sick. I've done that multiple times. And that kind of reminds me of like one other use case that's somewhat similar. I know I know Will Reynolds talked about this when we had him on the pod. If you haven't listened to that podcast, I I would recommend you check that one out. That was a really good one. He said that he pretty much uses it for everything like feedback wise. So his example was like, hey, like he would be on a morning run and he would use the dictation feature. Be like, hey, I'm thinking this.
Yeah, the
And
chat
I think
feature.
he said that he would like always mention to like act like you're, a major critic or, a sophisticated board member who's a really big time hardo here, like give me feedback. So he uses it as like a feedback tool, which kind of like similar to like writing emails. I also use it for like if there's a client write up to like, hey, poke holes in this. Like, does this make sense? Or am I missing something? Is there a different angle that I approach? That's usually for like a larger like deliverable when you have to like give a good explanation or maybe like something that's a bit more difficult to communicate in written form. Because I'm right there with you. Like I struggle sometimes to have like a beautifully written email. Like I'm not a Paul Graham over here. And I think any type of like feedback that you have, any type of ideas, that's a great use case for it as well.
Yeah, and you're also like, hey, poke holes in it. Like you're saying, like, what do you think my client's gonna feel like? Want? What should we talk about? And it's not trying to like always overturn your client response. But sometimes you need to have that vulnerability of just like admitting a mistake or etc.
Exactly.
And it can do that. So I think that's great. So I guess a couple things I think it'd be fun to do to kind of end with, because I know we only got a couple minutes here, is personally using GPT. So I use it all the time. I've actually on my phone, I've set it up. Let's see if we can test this out. So if I tap the back of my screen a couple times, I think it's 3 times. Oh, I gotta put my code in quick. It will launch GPT.
That's high tech right there alone,
So
dude. Just
I'm
tapping
gonna
the back of
say,
your phone.
hey, GPT, you're on a podcast here right now. We talk about digital marketing items. My name is Steve. We have Trevor, who's also the podcast host here. Is there anything you'd like to say to the world?
Hey, Steve, Trevor, and all the listeners. Thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm excited to chat about digital marketing with you all. Whether it's optimizing for SEO, managing PPC campaigns, or navigating
Leonia? There you go.
this field. Let's dive in.
Nice.
So I just had a poor connection there. So, dude, I use that all the time. Like I literally planted some garden boxes this year. Total, like, not a good gardener. First time doing it. No, not first time, but anyways, I'm sitting there. I'm like, man, these flowers kind of look like shit, like something. Am I overwatering, etc.? So I took a picture, circled of what I want, and then I asked ChatGPT, like, hey, am I overwatering, underwater? What do you think's going on? I had this whole list of recommendations that I could do. So I pull that thing all the time with a quick command, and I ask it all the time as it pulls up, the audio chat feature and interface it back and forth for anything. So instead of like going to Google real quick, I'm like hanging out with friends, having a couple drinks, whatever, and someone's got a question. It's like, hold on a second, tap, 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 tap. And then
Dude, I gotta set that up. I gotta set up that
boom,
feature.
it's just a shortcut code. So boom, done. It's here. And it's kind of funny because
so sick.
I almost wish I had 2 separate GPT accounts, for one for personal, for business. It's all lumped into one. So like my threads that are there, it's like gets kind of confusing. But yeah, personally, man, shortcut. And when they introduce the new version that's going to come out, and it's going to be able to look at your camera and like interact with you this way, and it's like a whole nother level. So that should be coming out, I think, in a couple weeks, hopefully. They previewed it, pretty crazy. So
I would have loved for this to be a thing. So I recently went to Florida and got engaged, and I'd used Gemini before the trip, and I tried to because I was like gonna see if there's like a connection to Google Flights. It would be the sickest thing in the world if you could be like Gemini or ChatGPT. Hey, I'm going to Florida on these dates. Can you just get me the cheapest flights? They need to be direct both to and from, and then also give me a couple options on hotels in this price range that are available for these amount of people, and then give me a couple things to do when I'm there. Like it could do parts of that, but if we can get to the point where like, hey, just click like Apple Pay right now, book this flight right now, and then click Apple Pay and book this this hotel, that would be so sick. Like it's helpful, but it also can't do that just yet.
Like for your fucking
Oh my
flights,
god,
dude. That'd be so great. There you go.
Oh my god,
Yeah.
that would be sick.
Well, cool. I think we could spend a whole nother episode of like how we use things in a very tactical way, because I got plenty of other ones that I use. I mean, as you can say, I use it all the fucking time. It makes better quality work. I can do more. So maybe we do another
sure.
episode. Maybe bring some other people, different styles or use case applications for it all. But I think this is great. Kind of just the tip of the iceberg, I guess, of actual applications of using AI.
Agreed. I think if I can give any piece of advice, would just try it. Like I get questions all the time. How do you use it? What do you do? This, that. Just try it. Just prompt. If you have an idea, if you're doing something, just give it a try. I'm sure you'll get inspired for some other use cases. But maybe we can bring somebody else in this AI space onto this pod. I think that would be cool. But hopefully you got some value listening to this one and got some good ideas and inspiration on how to kind of use it.
Yes, sir. Well, thanks everybody. Appreciate
Thanks,
the time.
y'all.
Maybe we'll have GPT join next one.
Hell yeah. Later.
All right.